wife finally had to give it away to clear some debts after he died. But even there we only see him rear view as almost all the more tantalizing. And yet he reveals himself tremendously, openly, in the geometry, in the layout, in the position of that white pot on the near eye-level table. Why are 2/3 of the paintings dominated by tables right at the front? In order to somehow cut you off from the event that you see past it, a woman reading a letter, weighing pearls. We may not notice the painting on the back wall is the Last Judgment, which is very quietly, discreetly inscribed on the wall. As though this woman, innocently weighing pearls, is weighing souls. The milkmaid, the sewer, it's tiny pictures. And from the 19th century onwards, there was a kind of recognition that a tradition of a certain sort of painting, extremely rare, extremely precious, had always existed, that there was a straight line from Giotto to Raphael, from Raphael to Velasquez or Poussin, Vermeer, Cézanne, and Mondrian, and possibly one or two of the Minimalist painters in America. A kind of straight line, and somewhere in the middle. But more recently, theories are beginning to develop among scholars. There was even a popular presentation of it not long ago by David Hockney. That it may not have been this physiological tendency to see pattern and order in chaos, but that it may more likely have been the use of certain sorts of camera techniques, tipping the object upside down or the other way round, with the use of mirrors, in order to simulate the real world in perspective very effectively, because you're looking at a three-dimensional world and you're converting it onto a two-dimensional surface. And that process involves certain principles. From the Renaissance onwards, obviously one of those was a single direction perspective. A horizon line with everything going to that point. Rather simplistic. In the real world, there isn't a single horizon line out there. It all depends on where your eye is, where you are. And there certainly isn't one single vanishing point there. The world is completely circumferential. It's all the way around. But for a painting, two-dimensional, you could almost make it like a box. And Vermeer may have been part of that tradition, albeit more sophisticated. God hides and no one wants to seek. Very Calvinist, not quite so Catholic. Gold, silver, I mean, one of the main criticisms about the Catholic Church and Catholic decor was its sumptuousness. Use it for the poor. But of course, from a Catholic perspective at that time, they wanted the ordinary person to come in and get some hint as to what heaven might be like. And how better to do that than magnificent paintings, wonderful glass, gold and silver everywhere. Heaven is something like that. When people walked into St. Peter's and saw Michelangelo's Last Judgment or the ceiling, if they had the opportunity, it was after all a private chapel. They were being given some kind of clue. And all these incredibly sumptuous altarpieces, Jan van Eyck, or Van Eyck, loaded with lapis lazuli, gold, silver, sometimes even diamonds. Same with rare books and illuminated pages. And then we come to Rembrandt. Vermeer's born in 1637, Rembrandt's born in 1606. Vermeer dies in 1675, Rembrandt dies in 1669. Vermeer dies at 47, Rembrandt dies at 63. As far as we can tell, they never met. As far as we know, Rembrandt was never in Delft. He's more likely to have been in London than in Delft. Hull is the latest theory. The point I'd like to make philosophically is that there's one person that was alive at the time and didn't meet either Rembrandt or Vermeer, who could be seen as having influenced both, even though they were very different. The Vermeer 31, 32 pictures, quiet interiors, humble, but incredibly powerful and structured, almost visionary. The capacity to convert the ordinary into the spectacular, into the poetic, into the silently beautiful. Rembrandt, 800 pictures, maybe more. According to Bradius, in the 1920s, according to latest scholarship, 311. Where have all those praises gone for all those non-Rembrandts that all rose up to the heavens and lay like jewels at angels' feet? When the scholar suddenly announced, this can't be a Rembrandt, it's got Prussian blue in it. Prussian blue wasn't invented until 1702. Did that little bit of jewellery by the angel's feet in heaven suddenly wither and vaporize? Oh, got it wrong. There's some kind of aesthetic appreciation system that knocks out the goodies in heaven in some way. Rembrandt becomes more and more isolated. There's a tremendous isolation in Vermeer, but it's not a depressing one. It isn't melancholy. But in a way, neither is Rembrandt's. Despite the death of most of his children, the death of his wife, who he appears to have been quite fond of, his failure to reach the heights, to be the Rubens of Amsterdam. He admired Rubens. And Rubens was the giant of the age, an absolute phenomenon. Rather like Jan van Eyck, 200 years earlier. Not just a painter, but a diplomat, and a scholar, and a collector, with the greatest jewellery collection in the world. And like Jan van Eyck, he was used by kings and queens to help stop wars. He stopped a war. Rubens definitely helped to stop a war between France and England. That's why Charles I knighted him, took his best pupil, Van Dyck. Rembrandt, in comparison to Rubens, a nobody. Never even got a high commission. No one posh commissioned him. When he did get a commission from a reasonable group of middle-class people, the night watch, as it's called, it's actually a day watch, just very dirty, very complete. It didn't fit the wall in the house in Dam Square that they had it for. Doesn't matter. Cut 11 inches off the left-hand side, 9 inches off the right. Wouldn't have done that to a Michelangelo at that time. Certainly not to a Rubens. Let me just throw out a couple of titles of paintings by Rembrandt. If you could just put your hand up if you recognize the image in your head. The Prodigal Son. The Jewish Bride. Self-portrait of St. Paul. The last two self-portraits, one in the National Gallery, one in Kenwood House. I was 16, 17, I used to call some of the later work, both of Titian and of Rembrandt, ethical paint. Isn't that sweet? As though paint could in some sense or another be scumbled or scratched or applied to a surface in such a way that it would evoke an ethical atmosphere. I certainly thought it could at that time. And the man that I referred to that could have influenced both Vermeer on one hand and Rembrandt on the other wrote a great work called The Ethics, and his name was Spinoza, Benedict or Baruch Spinoza, an excommunicated Jew. Another very silent, quiet fellow, incredibly strong character, independent, very much neither a borrower nor a lender be. Brave, faced down a mob once and saved the life of a friend of his on his own doorstep. "413 axioms in the philosophical work, almost like a kind of geometry. You need this axiom, which makes that point, which leads to that point, which then relates to that, which relates to the whole." Rather like Vermeer. But he makes the claim that the only thing that creates value in life are the ethical standards that you give yourself and that you live by, and your acceptance of other people's foibles. Rather like Rembrandt in his later years, certainly not in his early years, particularly not in his middle years, but in his later years. There's a kind of fantasy legend that when Rembrandt had lost his wife Saskia van Olenborg, and then later on treated Goethe Glix rather badly, paid her brother 500 guilders to get her locked in a lunatic asylum for 5 years, get her out of the way. He allegedly promised to marry her. And then another girl who was really preoccupied with, Hendrika Stoffels, who then died as well. And they say he was going out to buy herrings, and he had a pupil called Gerhard Flink. And he was walking through the mercantile areas, wearing an apron, because he wasn't very athletic by this time. He may have been alcoholic, we don't know. And the tendency was for the rich folk, the successful people, to throw coins from the bridge, from their carriage as they walked past, and they would hold their aprons and try and catch the money. Rembrandt was one of these people, and was noticed by this young painter, Gerhard Flink, who had just received a great commission for the mayor's parlour. And was very pleased with himself, had all his pals, and saw Rembrandt, but of course didn't recognize him. It had been 30 years. And Rembrandt had a lot of white hair, which he held up with a white rag around him. And he saw Rembrandt, and he said, "That's an interesting old man, invite him in." And they pulled him into the carriage, they went to the pub or the bar, and they were drinking, and they were being very pleased with themselves, and congratulating themselves. They received the deposit for the painting. Life was good. They were young. And Gerhard Flink called out, "Speech, old man, speech." And according to this tale, told by a Dutch biographer called R.O.LENKIEWICZ, probably apocryphal, Rembrandt quoted from Ecclesiastes. He says, "And I made me vineyards and great buildings, and maidservants and manservants, and I had all manner of things, and all vanity and vexation of spirit. Then said I, how dies the wise man? As the fool. Wherefore then was I more wise? Therefore I hated him. They were stunned into silence. They recognized him, felt a bit embarrassed. He smiled, wished them well, and went off to buy his herrings. Well, this rather charming, anecdotal, Alexander Korda black and white 1940s film image of Rembrandt as the wise, kindly soul rather smacks of Einstein in New York when he had to go shopping, would curse under